Welcome back to Conflicts of Interest. This is episode 236. I'm the host, Kyle Anzalone. On today's show, I'm talking about Ukraine and the renewed fighting going on there. No, it's not the Russian invasion that the White House has been warning about for months. It's between Ukraine and the separatists in that country. So I'll be breaking down what's happening and why and how it's going to or could impact the relationship between NATO and Russia. So that's what's on the slate for today's show. Share the show is at the Libertarian Institute, where I'm the news editor and write a news roundup every day. And that's no longer just the links and bullet points like I've been doing for a long time, but I'm actually writing an article almost every day for the Institute. So be sure to check that out. We often post the show on the blog at antiwar.com, the opinion editor at antiwar.com, so check out the viewpoints there. Also, I'll be talking today on the show about some of the articles I've been writing in the news section at antiwar.com. You can share the show from any of our pages. We have Facebook, Twitter, and then YouTube, Rumble, and Odysee accounts where we post the video version of the show. You can donate at Patreon or Subscribestar, and we also take crypto. All that information in the show notes page at the Institute. And then you could support the show by doing your CBD shopping at Paloma Verde, PalomaVerdeCBD.com. Promo code PEACE. That saves you 20% off when you spend $75 or more, and it gets the show a kickback. So it's a great way to help yourself with some high quality, lab tested CBD products at a good price, and it gets your favorite show some income. So it's a great way to improve on what you're doing. There's so many ways that CBD could help you, whether mental or physical health. It could help relieve some pain, take down anxiety. And so whatever you got going on, check out the great line of products they have at Paloma Verde. Gummies, soft gels, topicals, even stuff for your dog. PalomaVerdeCBD.com, promo code PEACE. Let's get into the show. All right, so I want to start off today by talking about the renewed fighting in the Donbass region. And so this is an area of eastern Ukraine that borders Russia that has a heavy ethnic Russian population. And so after the coup that the U.S. organized there in 2014 with, people who are now in the Biden administration still, like the President Joe Biden was very involved in that. And then Victoria Nuland, who's again now in the administration as an official, was heavily involved in that coup, including being on the ground in Ukraine and passing out cookies to the protesters that ultimately overthrew the government there. And so after that coup took place in Ukraine, the U.S. put in place a very pro-Ukrainian ethnic government that really turned against the ethnic Russian minority of Ukraine. And, there was some violence in the eastern regions, and eventually this erupted into a full-on civil war that was mostly quelled in 2015 with the Minsk Protocol agreements. And this was negotiated between Germany, France, Ukraine, and Russia, and it established a line of control. Now, there's been violations, I don't know, every month. Maybe there have been some months in the past 7 years where there wasn't a violation, but generally speaking, you could find violations of this fairly frequently. Civilians being killed by various instruments of war, whether it's snipers, artillery, tanks, things like that. I'm not sure how much I've read about landmine usage there, but definitely snipers and things like that have claimed quite a few civilian lives. 15,000 people are estimates that I see for who have the number of people who have died in this conflict, again, going back to 2014. And but largely speaking, over the past several years, the Minsk Accords have kept a, somewhat stable situation, ceasefire along that border. But we've had significant violations of it over the past week, but I guess really since maybe Thursday, towards the end of last week, these violations got pretty significant. So I kind of try to summarize it the best I could in this article at antiwar.com titled Fighting Intensifies in Eastern Ukraine, Donetsk Leader Orders Evacuation. And just for anybody who doesn't know, the Donbass region is made up of two states, the Donetsk and Luhansk region. And yeah, they're just like two states. I don't think there's necessarily like a central power in control, although I think if you go back to 2014, 2015 and see what happened, these regions actually did vote to join Russia. And so maybe they would see themselves as like, a portion of the Russian state should everything, they want to go their way or things like that. But anyways, I write, fighting between the Ukrainian military and separatists in the Donbass region has increased over the past 48 hours. On Thursday, over 100 explosions were reported in eastern Ukraine. That number increased to nearly 600 on Friday. The blast report had come from tank and artillery on both sides of the line of control. And then there were also reports of a car bomb and a pipeline explosion in the Donbass region. I think both of those were in the Donetsk region. And there was also reports of there was video, definitely a preschool or kindergarten, some kind of school for young children, was hit with artillery fire. Nobody was injured. There were a few people who were saying, hey, look, the windows weren't blown out right next to the hole in the building, but footage from inside the building shows that they have like several panes of bulletproof glass here. These people are living in a war zone, and so the windows are busted up. They're just not blown out because they're designed not to do that. And so that did seem to happen. I think Russia asserted that it was maybe a misleading to say that attack was carried out by the separatists, which are backed by Russia. Again, the U.S. backs the Ukrainian government, Russia backs the separatists here. The separatists are mainly ethnic Russians. And in fact, over the past 7-8 years now, since this civil war has broken out, there has been no like diplomatic or state offices in the Donbass region. So a lot of people, particularly Russians in the Donbass area, have gotten Russian passports over this time. And I believe Putin will allow Russian passport holders in the Donbass region to access Russian retirement benefits and severance and things like that. So in a lot of ways, there's something of a de facto, maybe very slow annexation going on here where, this region is just becoming, the people are just kind of becoming more and more a part of Russia, even if the lines on the map don't actually show it. And the Russian military isn't heavily in the Donbass area. They certainly bat the militia or I don't want to call them militias, but the armies there of the Donbass and Luhansk region. So anyways, I write, separatist leaders in the Donbass have been in opposition to Kiev since 2015. Violation of the Minsk Protocol ceasefire agreements are common. However, both Moscow and Washington have warned that conflict in the Donetsk or Luhansk could expand into a larger war. For months, the Biden administration has been claiming Russia is playing a false flag or fabricated attack as a pretext to invade Ukraine. Shortly after the announcement, there was an announcement in the Donetsk region. Sorry, I forgot to read this paragraph. There was an announcement in the Donetsk region to evacuate 700,000 civilians to Russia. The Russian government said they're ready to receive and feed these people as they're moved over. So after that announcement was made, there was a car bomb that exploded near the headquarters of the Donetsk People's Republic. Initially, I saw there were some reports in the American pundit class that were like, oh, this is the excuse Putin's going to use. But I haven't seen Putin claim that this was like a terrorist attack that's going to create Russian involvement in Ukraine. Nobody was injured in that attack. A vehicle was destroyed. Well, there was some speculation that the car bomb could trigger a Russian invasion. Ukrainian officials continue to downplay the threat. We have Defense Minister of Ukraine told his country's parliament on Friday, we estimate the probability of a large-scale escalation as low, adding our intelligence sees every move that could pose a possible threat to Ukraine. And so if you look at what's coming from the Ukrainian government, is still far more downplayed than the American government. Although I did see the Ukrainian foreign minister was demanding that the Western countries apply sanctions to Russia now, before Russia invades. And so I wrap up my article here with, while the U.S.'s dire predictions of invasion have yet to come true, there is no indication the fighting in Ukraine will slow down, with Donbass officials rejecting any talks from Kiev as pointless. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, meanwhile, said he's very concerned about the ongoing violations of the Minsk agreement. All right, so moving on to an article that I wrote today, titled Macron Putin Working Towards Ukraine's Ceasefire. I write, the office of French President Emmanuel Macron said that a phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin resulted in an agreement to work towards a ceasefire in Ukraine. Fighting has escalated in the separatist Donbass region over the past week, with hundreds of explosions reported. The coming talks will come under the Normandy format. In 2015, Germany, France, Russia, Ukraine developed the Minsk protocols, conducted within the Normandy format. Minsk II has been mostly successful in keeping fighting in Ukraine's civil war to a minimum. Recent talks between the four parties took place in Berlin without any progress. At that time, the next meeting was scheduled for March. It seems that the pace of diplomacy will now rapidly accelerate. Macron planned to speak with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz shortly after his call with Putin. The French statement said intense diplomatic work will take place in the coming days. The Kremlin confirmed Paris's statement. The Russian press release said that Putin raised the issue of pumping modern weapons and ammunition by NATO countries into Ukraine, which pushes Kiev to a military solution to the so-called Donbass problem. The potential Paris-Moscow breakthrough came as the U.S. government is adamant that a Russian invasion will occur. On Sunday, CBS News reported the U.S. intelligence that Russian commanders have received orders to proceed with the invasion of Ukraine. While Biden says he is convinced that Putin has decided on invasion, Macron has continued to say that Putin has made no such decision. After a meeting with Macron earlier this month, Putin said that a proposal from Paris laid the basis for a potential resolution. And so, while we're seeing a lot of rhetoric around this invasion is going to happen from the U.S., and I'll get into a little bit more of that in a minute, that is not being reflected in almost all the other parties involved here, maybe other than the U.K. And so now the last article that I wrote up that I got here, it is about Biden's press conference on Friday, where it was pretty short. I think it was probably under 10 minutes. He spoke for about 6 minutes and then took 3 questions with a couple clarifications and things like that. I titled this piece, Biden is convinced Putin will invade Ukraine. President Joe Biden says he is convinced Russian President Vladimir Putin has made the decision to invade Ukraine, telling reporters at a press conference that Russian troops have the country surrounded and that the attack will occur in the coming week. When asked why he thought Putin would invade, Biden responded significant intelligence capabilities. And I'm going to just clarify here that after Biden said that, he did wrap up the press conference and didn't go further. And I did read on CNN that Biden had, or the administration had said that Biden had not planned on saying that at the press conference that he was convinced that Putin had decided to invade. So I write, the president's great message comes as fighting has increased in Ukraine's separatist Donbass region over the last few days. The statement followed a long series of alarmist predictions from the White House in recent weeks that failed to materialize. Further, Ukrainian officials continue to downplay the threat. Biden highlighted the efforts his administration has taken to arm the region against Russia, including $650 military aid in assistance to Ukraine. While in Poland on Friday, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin announced a $6 billion weapons sale to Poland, including 250 Abrams tanks. In his speech, Biden stressed that the entire world is united against Russia, saying NATO is ready to respond with sanctions and come to the defense of any member that was attacked. However, the president emphasized that Ukraine is not a member of the alliance and would not be defend it with American troops. Asked about Putin's plan to oversee nuclear capable missile drills, the president said he did not believe Russia has plans to use nuclear weapons and was attempting to gain leverage over the security balance in Europe. Despite his continued warnings of a Russian threat, Biden has maintained that a pathway for diplomacy remained open, noting that Secretary of State Antony Blinken would meet with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on February 24th in Europe. He added, however, that the window for talks would close if a Russian invasion began. And so there's a few parts of this I want to get into just a little bit further. The first is, I think, the main message of Biden's speech before he got into the Q&A, and that was there's unity among NATO, and that there's no, like breathing room there, and that NATO was standing against Russia and all this kind of stuff, right? So there is a lot of interesting conversation around this idea of what it would mean for NATO if Russia did invade Ukraine. There are some people who are saying that this would be a monumental fracturing of NATO for several reasons. One being that Germany and the other European countries may be unwilling to go along or to the extent of sanctions that the US and the Baltic countries and Poland want to, the UK probably as well. Also, it would kind of show that NATO's, or at least some people are saying, I don't know if this is actually the case, but some people are saying it would show NATO to be something of a paper tiger. Now, I think in one respect, this is a little bit of a hawkish argument that they're trying to make, like if you leave anywhere, then it shows that you're weak and you won't defend everything. But at another time, it does kind of show that there is a limit of what the U.S. is willing to do. And while, every U.S. official may come out and say, we will defend Ukraine's sovereignty and all this, they're really not all that serious about it. And so there is that aspect. Now, there's other people who are saying this will be great for NATO because everybody's going to go, Putin really is Hitler. He's an expansionist, Soviet, wannabe dictator, and what he really wants is to reconquer the Baltic states and, reconstitute the Warsaw Pact halfway across Europe or something crazy like that, right? And so, they see any aggressive action in Ukraine by Russia as a real reason, and that will really bolster NATO. I think, there's a lot more nuance to than people in either camp or maybe making it out to be, but it is, things to consider about this. And then, of course, you do have the framework that I think largely makes up the foreign policy thinking of the Biden administration. That is, we're the united free world against the corrupt, evil Russians, which, I mean, they're not communists, and half the U.S. allies are, worse human rights record than the, pretty bad record that the Russians have anyways. And, the U.S. record isn't all that much better. So I want to mention that aspect of Biden's speech, and then that he did downplay the nuclear issue. He didn't play into that. And actually, I think he's probably right about the fact that the reason Putin attended that is it's just about a security balance thing. And it's one thing that Russia can do to show that it's serious about this negotiations. And it's the same kind of thing the U.S. does by flying nuclear capable bombers up to Russia's border. Now, a couple other things I want to talk about here on the Russia issue. This from The Hill. Rand Paul threatens to block Ukraine-Russia resolution. On Thursday, there was a attempt to pass a symbolic resolution by the Senate, quick pass, without any debate or anything like that. They just go, they maybe even take a consensus, maybe they hold a vote and it's going to be 98-1 or something like that. But any senator can force any bill to go through that process. They don't have to allow things to be quickly passed. One senator can do that. And so Rand Paul was threatening to do that on this bill. He had done it in the past with the Iron Dome bill. And, not all of his motives behind that are good, but at least, this has in some way does curtail the U.S. militarism. And so Rand Paul had some amendments that he wanted to add. I think this got done in the back room where Rand Paul agreed either I think one of his amendments must have made it in, because when this thing actually does end up getting passed, it gets passed with something that specifically says this should not be interpreted as an authorization to use military force against Russia or in Ukraine or something like that. And so that was something that Rand Paul was pushing again there. As much as I hate to say it, it's probably needed to be in there. As disturbing as that is, it's probably great that Rand got that done. At the same time, it's not great that this resolution gets passed, and that I guess Rand Paul did drop his objection to allow quick passage. And so just another hawkish thing that the Senate has passed on the Russian issue. We did get the response from Russia on the U.S. security proposal that is sent to Russia. So probably a month and a half or so ago, Russia sent a letter with all these security demands for Europe and everything like that. And then they asked for a written U.S. response that was delivered now a couple weeks ago. And the U.S. has gotten a response back to Russia on that. And as well as we have some of the language from Russia, including saying they will respond with military and technical measures since the U.S. and its allies are unwilling to reach a security deal. And again, I think that the interpretation, the equivalent in the American government of military and technical measures, is saying that all options are on the table. And so they say our red lines are key security interests and Russian sovereign right to defend themselves are still being ignored, and that it felt like the Western countries were cherry picking security issues and unwilling to deal with the ones that Russia was most concerned about. And so I think this is a response kind of directly to what the Biden administration has before it. And it sounds like a rejection of it, right? He's saying that Russia isn't going to just allow the West to cherry pick the missile issue, the missile placements in Poland and Romania and sending observers there and everything like that. They're actually demanding, serious negotiations around the placement of U.S. troops in Eastern Europe and things like that, NATO troops in Eastern Europe and things like that. So maybe there's room for negotiations here. The good news is, again, with the Putin and Macron call today, some indication that they are moving in the right direction and towards de-escalation on the Ukraine issue. I think Putin sees this largely as, all-in-one issue, maybe. I don't know if he's willing to, just like de-escalate tensions completely. I guess maybe he would be willing to help negotiate and end to fighting in eastern Ukraine, but I don't think that will be necessarily a resolution to the larger issue, since a lot of these larger issues have existed since far before the recent round of fighting in eastern Ukraine, and that fighting in eastern Ukraine is likely a result of the larger geopolitical tensions going on. So the Russian response is really important. I have mentioned on last week, the Thursday show that we put out, me and Connor Freeman, that I thought Russia would not, go forward with any military action until they gave this response. And so now this response has been given. Not sure what the U.S. is going to do with it, or if Russia thinks that there is a diplomatic route here. However, the Kremlin did seem to indicate today that they were going to go forward and look at least at some of the Normandy format options that France was indicating. Although, just like in the past when the French statements were a lot more optimistic than the Russian statements, we're seeing that again this time. Ukraine President Zelensky says that his country still wants to join NATO. There were some questions around this after the Ukrainian, I think, ambassador to the UK, but an Ukrainian official in Europe has said that that was a negotiable issue. Zelensky responded with basically saying, no, it's not. And then two of the more recent stories just today that I wanted to mention, where one is that Antony Blinken was on CNN warning that a Russian invasion could come at any time. We had the report from CBS News from unnamed U.S. intelligence officials saying that the orders from the Russian invasion had begun. Although I'm pretty sure the reasoning for that is just because, well, we think they're doing that what they would be doing if there was an invasion, which seems like pretty loose reasoning and not really intelligence. So that's part of what's going on with this whole situation. I think there's a lot of U.S. inflated threats from the intelligence community that the administration is dealing with. And then the last story I'll mention today is that NATO followed the trend of a lot of its member states and relocated its staff from the capital of Kiev to the city of Lviv. I think is how you say it, Lviv. Is closer, I believe, to the Polish border. All right, everybody, a little bit shorter show for today, but I will be back with plenty of more content this week. I will have news roundups out every day at the Libertarian Institute articles. The one for Monday, I think you'll all really like. It's about African coup leaders training with the U.S. And then, keep an eye out on the news section at antiwar.com. Maybe I'll have a featured article out this week at the Libertarian Institute again. So a lot of great stuff, to keep in, share, and all that coming out at the Institute and at antiwar.com, not just my work. So please do what you can to put that out there to more people. And like I said, I'll be back with more shows later in the week. Thanks, everyone.